Hi, everybody. Welcome. It's our weekly Zoom. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being a part of this. We are talking about something today that I'm really actually very excited about. And just to orient people, for anyone who's here for the first time, hasn't been here in a while, you're welcome to put something in the chat and just let people know you're here and you can say hello. It's nice if that chat is active. If you're referencing things that the speaker talks about, or if you have your own insights or ideas, that can all go in the chat. And I actually think it adds a really nice layer to the conversation. Some weeks people are very chatty, other weeks they're not, and that's really up to you. I know there are some heavy things happening in the world right now, and so I don't know the kind of how people are feeling. I don't want to make light of anything, but we're also here to connect and learn some things. So I'm going to introduce Angie, and then we're going to talk about integration. So Angie, uh, Angie is an integration coach and a guide. I have done some guiding alongside her a number of times, and she's very, very good at what she does. She holds beautiful space. She creates beautiful space that then makes it feel safe for people that she's guiding to drop in. It's really lovely. And she's someone I think is really good. She's one of these guides that I think is really, really good in the space. She's fairly new. I think she's been doing this for about a year and a half maybe. And but we need more people like this in the space because she just makes room for people and she meets them where they are. And you'll see that about her. So I'm really excited to be bringing her in to meet with you. Angie, are you there?
Yep, I'm here.
There you are. I figured you were coming.
Yep.
So as we get started, part of what I want to give a few announcements. We have, if you're in Utah or want to come out to Utah, we're having a Dell weekend over Equinox next week. So not this weekend, but the weekend after that. We're going to do some camping for those who want to stay overnight. And for those who don't, you can just come out. We are doing some work, but we'll also be doing a lot of just hanging out and being together. And I know the big reason we're doing these online Zooms is that so many people aren't in Utah. So I don't mean to dangle that in front of you if you can't be there. But if you are here or know someone who's going to be here, it's a really beautiful time to connect. So I hope you can be a part of that. So then to integration. Integration is, I think, one of the most important things we do when we're worshiping and using plant medicine, using these sacraments. And when I'm guiding people, when I'm prepping them, I will say 5% is prep, 5% is the journey, and 90% is the integration. And that is how I guide, we are heavy on integration. And we really spend some time prepping people and making sure they have good support, make sure they have, whether that's family, friends, maybe they're great at journaling, and so that's important. Maybe they have a therapist, but whatever they have, we really work to make sure their integration plan is a good one. And then I circle back to them as a guide. I circle back to them throughout the first few weeks, about 3 weeks, where I'm really trying to touch base with them 2 or 3 times a week to make sure they're doing that integration. And the reason is, if you take some mushrooms and go to a concert, It's lovely. It's so much fun. Or you go on a hike in the mountains. That's really beautiful. And that is a beautiful way to take mushrooms and to worship. Um, but if you're wanting that change, if you're wanting deep internal change, I'm finding a lot of success with higher doses, and then with long integration. And I'm seeing people that I have guided, they're integrating for weeks and months, and in some cases, years. They're integrating that same journey. And, all the insights they get out of that journey, they are really holding on to and revisiting month after month after month. And I'm seeing dramatic change. So rather than just taking mushrooms, making a small change, and then taking mushrooms again, which again, that's not a bad way to do it. But by doing a deep dive with a lot of mushrooms, then you can get a lot of insights, and you just go through that list and work on it over time. And it's not linear. It's, you're kind of circling back to things. But I've seen it happen with many people over many years. And so I do think that integration is important. And I think a lot of people, they don't take it as seriously as some. I'm not saying you have to do it that way. I'm saying I have seen big changes, both in my life, in Steve's life, and other people that I've guided. So when Angie and I started talking about this, her self-inquiry program that she does, and how she integrates it into integration, that was the wrong use of words, how she uses it in integration, I thought, oh, that could be a really beautiful Zoom, and it could open the conversation of integration. And I'm seeing a message from Andrea in the chat, and I like that because it's reminding me, if you have a question, like when I'm talking, or if Angie's talking and you put it in the chat, we may be able to answer it right then. If not, you can drop it in the Q&A. At the bottom, there's a box. This is Q&A, and we'll get to that at the end of the presentation, the formal part of it. And I'll jump in and I'll start asking some questions to Angie. So even if you put it in the chat and she misses it, I'll grab it and save it for the end. So yes, Andrea's saying, when I talk about high doses, are you talking about 3.5, over 3.5? Yes. Great question. When I guide, I start with 5 grams, and that is our base. And so we start with 5, and that's called a hero's dose. But a lot of my people will actually start with 10 grams or more. And I call that a heroine's dose. And so I've had people between, start with 5, stay at 5. Some move up to 7, 7.5. Some immediately jump up to 10. But I've had people go up 15 and even 20. And I will say, when I'm working with people, I don't guide a lot, because I work with people who are resistant. They're either highly anxious, and so their body is resisting, and so we do a higher dose, or they have a medication or something that means they need a higher dose. So I don't work with everybody that comes to me, just because there's so many great guides out there. Not everyone needs me, but the ones who do, and I feel like we're a good fit, and my presence is going to help them, then I do work with them. But yes, we start with 5 and go up from there. So Andrea, I hope that answers your question. That being said, I am very excited to hear what Angie has to say. So I'm going to close my screen, but I'm here, I'm watching the comments. And if I do feel like somebody's clarification in the chat, if I'm not seeing you get to it, Angie, I may jump on and just ask you the question. So just know that might be coming, but usually I'm off until you're kind of wrapping up the formal part of the presentation. So thank you again to everyone for being here. And I'm turning the time over to Angie. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sarah. What a beautiful introduction. Hold on, I'm going to share my screen here. Give me 2 seconds.
You're just fine.
Do you see my screen, Sarah?
Not yet.
Not yet?
No.
Hold on.
Let me see.
Share
Right now.
this.
Yeah, well, Angie does that. I'm gonna and take your time, Angie. You're just fine. Yeah, Andrea, you are absolutely right. I'm gonna respond to that. Everybody's experiences are so different, and set and setting is real. So if someone's mindset is not right, or they're uncomfortable with something happening in their life, then yeah, it's the dosages can be all over the place. The other thing I find is my friends and clients who take very high doses to start with, they may not need that full high dose in subsequent experiences, that they take a much smaller dose, but their mind knows where it needs to go. And I've had that happen for myself, where sometimes I have an edible, I'm on weed, and I end up in a psychedelic place. So I know that can happen, but I do see it a lot with my clients who take high doses to start with.
Sarah, I'm sorry. We are just trying to get my screen up. Give me
You are
2
just
seconds.
fine. You are just fine.
Oh, I got
Brandon,
it.
I don't know if you see that message, but there's a message for you in the chat.
I can't see anything, but we're making this work.
Yeah. Yeah, Andrea, again, I'm going to just keep talking while Angie figures this out. Yeah, so Andrea says she's bawled for hours with 1 gram. Oh, looks like you're getting there. With 1 gram, and had a very scary experience with 4 grams, but she was alone. And I really, if you're going to take a higher dose, I do suggest not being alone, having someone at least in the vicinity who is your trip sitter, if not a guide, who can help anchor you to what is real. And that is a big job of mine. I feel like when I'm guiding, is my job is to kind of keep people, to help them realize they have more control over this experience than they realize. And if they're in a sad place that has them crying and crying, do they want to stay there, or do they want to move somewhere else? Are they doing some healing? Are they doing some work in that space, or do they want to go somewhere else? So and she may talk about some of that, but I totally get that, Andrea. And yes, they're just, there's not a way you have to do it, but there are lots of ways you can do it. And so I try to put some out there so people can kind of pick and choose what actually feels right to them for any given experience. Okay, Angie, now you're all set. So I'm going to close out and looking forward to this.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. Thank you for the introduction. Sorry, I am a little technologically challenged, so thanks for bearing with me. I am very honored to be talking to you about integration and self-inquiry. I'm going to dive into that a bit too. A practice that is loving what is. This practice has been life-changing for me, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that. But let's first talk about, Sarah did a great job of introducing how important integration is. Like most of us who have had psychedelic experiences, integration can look a lot of different ways. Usually for me, I just need someone to listen to me verbally process. That's what integration, that's the best form I've found for myself. someone that I can bounce my experiences off of. After I guide someone, I like to follow up like Sarah does as well, and sometimes just offer a place where I'm sitting in non-judgment and they can, talk about all of their experiences that they want to talk about. By talking things out, you're able to translate these abstract visions into practical wisdom. Sometimes it helps us connect the dots between what you saw and felt and your real life situations. Integration keeps you from treating psychedelics as quick fixes without changing underlying patterns or getting lost in the mystical highs without tending to your daily life and responsibilities. Not to minimize how wonderful it is to get lost in mystical highs, because it is, but I think even after those experiences, it's amazing to integrate after. So integration looks a lot of different ways. These are just a few of the many different ways you can integrate. So journaling, write down what you experienced, how it felt, the themes that stood out. And then it's nice to have that so you can revisit. I like to go back and look at journals I've kept with like my first experiences. It's nice to be able to revisit those things. Art making, painting, drawing, music or poetry can express insights that sometimes words just can't alone. And I just have to, quick side note, I was able to help with a guided journey. I was just helping the guide. And it was one of the most beautiful souls I think I've ever met on the planet, like one of those kind of people. And they had the most beautiful insight to that they were an artist and that they needed to tap into artistry. And not long after they left, we got this beautiful poem they had written. I'm using the word beautiful a lot. I'll have to come up with something better, but that fits this person. But they send us this poem that just was thanking us, and it was gratitude. And I thought, here they are already integrating that they are an artist, and by sending us something like that, it was lovely. Storytelling, verbal processing, meditation or mindfulness. This brings a calm and helps you revisit your insights when you're sitting in meditation. Yoga or movement helps release tension and anchor insights into the body. Therapy, process those difficult emotions or traumas that may come up with a certified licensed professional. And then I'm going to add self-inquiry. Question the beliefs that surface during your journey, that can sometimes surface during your journey. So this is the topic I'm going to focus on most tonight. It's something I have studied extensively. Sometimes after a psychedelic experience, people can leave with raw insights or confusing emotions or half-formed revelations, and inquiry can just help ground these. I first learned about self-inquiry and Byron Katie about 15 years ago. I was leaving my lifelong religion, and a therapist introduced me to her and her book. It was the first time that I was invited with actual tools to find peace in the present moment and to find peace with reality. There are some people who will say things like, just let it go. Just, why are you worrying about that? Just let that go. And I like, well, I'd love to, but I don't know how. Like, that's the problem. And this was the first introduction I had to actually letting something go and accepting reality for what it is. So over the years, I worked with the tools in this book. And then a couple of years ago, I found an amazing teacher and facilitator who learned from Byron Katie, and she taught me how to take this process even deeper. If anything I talk about tonight like is interesting at all, this is a great book to start with. Like, it's wonderful. It gave me really good tools, and it can help get rid of thoughts quickly. I've also noticed that ChatGPT does a good job with what she talks about in that book. What I learned goes a little bit deeper, but for sure that book is amazing and a really good place to start. So do you ever find yourself stuck in stories that cause you stress? He's mad at me. My clients are going to leave. Excuse me. I'm not enough. I'm too much, etc., etc. If you notice yourself ruminating on thoughts like that, notice what you feel like in your body. Something might be off in your stomach. Something might be off in your head or your heart. Physically, something might be off. And that's always my sign to do some investigating. When we question our stressful thoughts, we stop living from a place of fear or assumption. Instead, we grow more self-aware, we respond with emotional intelligence, and we make choices that reflect our true values, not what we see of ourselves in the world when we're in a story. So over time, this creates more inner peace and a more authentic, fulfilling life. I think it's very important to say what self-inquiry is not, especially if you're working with a facilitator. It's not therapy. It is not advice. A skilled facilitator won't tell you what to do. They just simply hold space and ask you questions, and you find your truths. And that's why it feels like more of a meditation practice. You're discovering your own truth instead of taking on someone else's. So I thought I would just take you through an example of what a facilitation would look like. So let's say that you're seeking an inquiry facilitation for the thought, Joe betrayed me. So maybe Joe did something terrible to you. You're left wondering and possibly swirling with all of the questions like, what did I do? How did we get here? I thought we would last forever. How could he hurt me like this? And you're having a hard time letting it all go. That downward thought spiral that any negative thought can bring on. So to start, I will have people close their eyes and really settle into a recent moment that becomes their anchor moment where they're believing that thought that Joe betrayed me. So let's say you were about to step into a meeting. You're at work, about to step into a meeting. The thought goes through your head, Joe betrayed me. Really settle into that moment. That thought can then have the power to derail you from your day completely. Maybe you're now walking into your meeting with your stomach in knots because of that thought. You're distracted. Your anxiety takes over your mind and your body. So anchor into that moment when you're believing Joe betrayed me. In that moment, when you're believing that thought, how do you see Joe? And then we'd really dig into Joe. Who is Joe? What kind of a person would betray you like that? How is Joe showing up in the world when he can do something like that to you? Then we'd look at betrayal. In that moment when you're believing the thought, Joe betrayed me, how do you see betrayal? What happened? What did that betrayal do? What power did that betrayal have over you and your life? And this is an important opportunity to explore what betrayal means to you, what it does to you, the power it has over you. And then we'd look at yourself. When you're believing the thought, Joe betrayed me, in that moment, how do you see yourself? Everything that you thought that betrayal and Joe did to you, how do you see yourself? Who have you become because of this? And then finally, we would go back in time. I'd have you close your eyes and think back to the very first time you remember believing the thought, someone betrayed me. Almost every time a memory comes up and you just trust what comes up. But let's say yours is, my brother stole a toy and lied about it. And that's the first time I felt betrayal. So we'd anchor into that moment. In that moment, when your brother stole a toy and lied about it, how did you see that situation? And in that moment, how did you see yourself? What did you think it meant about you? And it could be something like perhaps small or hurt or powerless. And this opens an opportunity to tie what you thought you became as a child when you were betrayed, and what you believe as an adult when you felt betrayed. So it's a chance to see some belief systems that we take on as children that carry with us our whole lives. In this case, every time we felt betrayed by someone. So finally, then we go back to that anchor moment. Put yourself in that moment. Everything is exactly the same. You're walking into your meeting, but the thought cannot cross your mind, cannot even occur to you or exist that Joe betrayed me. That thought is gone. So how do you see that moment now? Before you were walking into a meeting, you were swirling with anxiety. But now that moment becomes, well, I'm walking into a meeting. The end. Feel how simple that becomes. That is how simple the moment always was. So stay in that anchor moment. Everything's the same, nothing has changed, but the thought Joe betrayed me doesn't exist. How do you see Joe in that moment without the thought? Most likely, and just to play out our example, well, we don't really see him in that moment, but we could guess or assume that Joe's out living Joe's life. And that is reality. Has nothing to do with us. So then we do the same thing with the betrayal and with the self. How do you see yourself in that moment when you're walking into a meeting? You're probably focused on your day and ready for your meeting. You're present in that moment, walking into that meeting. You are free from your swirling stories in your mind, and this is reality. And sometimes that is the sweetest spot you can find, is just being in reality. It's simple. So then we'd revisit the past. In that moment, the thought can occur to you that your little brother betrayed you. How do you see that situation now? Most likely you would see that there was a child that took a toy and was thinking of himself and was saving his skin and was not honest about it. And it had nothing to do with you, which is most likely Joe's betrayal didn't either. So all this is to say, I'm not minimizing anything that anyone has gone through in the past with a betrayal. It's not negating anything that you went through or worked through, but it does help bring you back to the present moment, helps you shed judgments, and helps you identify patterns. It helps you not have to live those painful moments over and over again and feel like Joe is betraying you over and over again. This is, of course, a simplified overview. In a session with someone else, if I facilitate or if I'm just doing it with myself, it is much more in depth, and you really make sure you judge everything, and it helps you just completely get unstuck from your story. This is a mindfulness practice. It goes hand in hand with daily meditation. Learning how to let thoughts flow in and out without attaching to any. What do we know right now? Right now, I know I'm sitting in this chair sharing something with you that means a lot to me. Anything else that runs through my head is just a story. And I have a tendency to get in my head. Like what business do I have talking about this? I'm probably boring everyone. All of those things that can swirl. But in reality, all I know is I'm sitting in this chair talking to you. The rest is just a story. And the beauty is when you can learn to not attach to those things. Okay, I mentioned a bit at the start, but I believe self-inquiry pairs beautifully with psychedelic integration. With psychedelics, we're finding our own answers. You're going internal, finding your own lessons, messages, etc. And self-inquiry is the same. You find your own answers. After a psychedelic journey, you often come back with flashes of insight, sometimes overwhelming or hard to articulate. Self-inquiry gives you a structured way to slow down and question the meanings you attach to those experiences. For example, if your trip surfaced something that was like, I am unlovable, or the world is a dangerous place, which I know we're all feeling a bit today, you can use this method to help work through those thoughts and beliefs and help you integrate the truths you found with your life experiences. Sometimes a trip is simply peaceful, though. Joyful, heart-opening. Not everything needs to be dissected. Just like we don't journal every dream, we don't need to run inquiry on every mushroom moment. It's just one of the tools that can help you make sense or clear something challenging that may arise. It's simply a tool to use to work through the stressful things that arise. The spaciousness felt on psychedelics can fade quickly when normal stressors return. By doing inquiry on everyday thoughts like my boss doesn't respect me, I should have done more during my trip, etc., you weave the openness of the psychedelic state into the fabric of ordinary living. It's like keeping the channel open after the medicine has faded. One of my first psychedelic experiences, it was the first time I had been in school for this and had worked so hard to be able to be present and feel what non-judgment actually feels like with doing this work. And my first psychedelic experience was like, oh, I actually see what this feels like. This is amazing. Was with my husband watching him, like Mother Earth was handing him his ass. And I was just sitting there in bliss, like in non-judgment going, oh, this is so great. But I'm in this stage of life where my kids are adults and I could see them off doing their things. And the reason I shared, and I remember thinking, oh, look at them over there doing their thing. That's so great. And some of them are struggling, and that is life. But still in the struggle, it was look at them over there doing their thing. And then maybe 6 months later, I had a really good self-inquiry session where I think my stressful thought was something like, if I let go of my kids, they'll leave. Or if I felt like I had a tether to them, if I let go, they'll abandon me. I'll never see them again. And by the end of my session, I was so clear that that tether I thought I had was completely fake. There's no tether to my kids. For me, I'm speaking for me because this is what I found with my stressful thought, but no tether to my children, just simply love. They are over there doing their thing. And at the end, I felt like I was in medicine. It was like, okay, I see how these two can work so well together. That clarity that you feel and that non-judgment that you can feel. Byron Katie says that every stressful thought is a doorway to freedom. Both psychedelics and self-inquiry dissolve resistance to reality. Psychedelics often show you the interconnectedness of everything, and self-inquiry gives you a daily practice to continue loving what is, even when the medicine isn't present. The ultimate goal for me is to be able to walk through life being at peace with whatever shows up, whatever the fates toss at me. And it is not easy, but trying to love what is no matter what. So thank you so much for your time. Thanks for letting me share something that has meant a lot to me. Thank you for listening.
Awesome. Thank you, Angie. Yeah, that was just right. That's what I was hoping we would talk about. Oh, where'd you go? Come back.
I'm here.
We're let's do a few questions. There is somebody who put a question in the Q&A, so we'll do that. But if anybody has anything they want a clarifying question, somebody asked if this was DBT, and I clarified that this is not technically DBT, but there are some similar practices that are happening. So yes, if there are other questions, now would be a great time. If you have questions about integration, if you have questions about specifically the self-inquiry, if you have questions for me or Angie, they can go in the chat or in the Q&A. So the Q&A says, I believe this is for you. He's saying, are you a guide or a therapist? And then what's the difference between the two? And then I'll do a follow-up. So go ahead and you can answer that first.
I am a guide and a self-inquiry facilitator and an integration coach. So not a therapist. I don't have that is not my lane. So I stay in my lane, but I will definitely guide people with their psychedelic experiences and then be here to listen after. And if they want to work through something with self-inquiry, we can do that.
So, therapist, I'm going to also answer a therapist goes through specific schooling, gets, has to be licensed by the state but does a lot of these things, right? They just have specific skills that they have been taught. And sometimes you need a therapist and you really do need a professional. Other times you need someone to listen. And so not everybody needs a therapist all the time. And so I do like that our community is developing integration coaches, people like Angie, who, whether you work with her from the start and she guides you and then integrates with you after, or what I'm seeing some are people who have had experiences that need to be processed and they need someone to help them. I'll give an example. I a couple months ago ran into somebody that I've known my whole life, and she took mushrooms. She took them by herself in a room, and she wanted to talk to me about it. We were literally at a funeral, so I'm like, all right, we'll talk about this later. But no, she really needed to talk about it, and she kept saying, I had this bad trip, and I'm like, oh, that's not good, tell me. And her bad trip was that she was crying and she was sad. And I'm like, as I'm talking to her, I'm like, oh, this isn't a bad trip. It's just an unprocessed trip. And she needs someone like Angie who will hold space, listen to her, and then help her reframe the experience that happened. And I think that's true of most bad trips. It's either somebody who's the set or setting is not good, or the event goes unprocessed. That is the vast majority of bad trips. And so taking those things very seriously, just helps you have a more pleasant time. Okay, so then the follow-up is, so we tell the difference between what a guide is and a therapist. And you know what? I'm going to even talk a little more about that. I work with therapists where they're dealing with somebody long term, like, maybe they've been working with this person for a year, and now the person is saying, I think I want to do some psychedelics. It would be, unless they have a very specific license, it's not appropriate for a therapist to offer psychedelics, to sit with people who are with psychedelics. Some do it, some have the authority to do it, some don't. And if they're caught, they're going to get in trouble, the ones who don't have the authority. So my feeling is we need more therapists, and we need the therapists who are out there and who are good to do therapy. So I like to work with therapists, and they send their clients to me. I guide them because I'm cheaper than a therapist would be. I'm more experienced in this than a therapist would be who's getting started. And then I package them up and send them back so that the therapist can work with them through the integration. So I think we all belong in the space. We just need to figure out how we're all working together. So then this person is saying, would you guide someone? So I'll be curious what you say, Angie, because I have my opinions on this. Would you guide someone on a psychedelic trip over Zoom? And he says, I'm thinking if someone is familiar with psychedelics, which he is, could you be there for the initial 30 to 40 minutes, help them drop in the most beneficial way? And he says he usually trips alone, acts as his own guide, therapist, shaman, and he likes what he does. but he thinks if he had a qualified person with him at the launch, he'd get more out of it. What is your opinion? And then I'll give you mine.
Gosh, I'm open to it, hearing that he has experience.
Yeah.
So the fact that he is tripped alone, I would say, yes, I'd be comfortable with that.
Yeah. And I would say I don't know if the launch is where I'd be better for him. I think one of the best things I do as a guide is, as people are coming out of the experience, because I only do one-on-one, I sit there here with my computer and I'm just taking notes. I'm listening as the person starts to download just all these little memories and things they just experienced. And what I find is I'll end up with 5 to 10 pages of notes, and it's stuff that is fleeting. It'll be in their brain and then they don't think of it again. They don't think of it until they come back to the notes, sometimes weeks or months later, and they'll go, oh, I totally forgot I even had that memory. So now, could you do that with not tape recorder, voice memo? You could do that for yourself, but then it's the work of getting in and getting it all typed up. I guess we all have Chat GPT now. So all the little barriers I'm putting up, I'm like, oh, those are probably easy. But yeah, it could be interesting. I would be maybe open to it. I would want to ask a few questions of the person, but yeah, those are interesting questions. So I hope we answered them properly for you. We do have another question. Someone's asking about microdosing. Do you microdose? And are you asking us specifically, or are you just looking for information about microdosing? So I'm not even quite sure how to answer that. You can answer it in the Q&A or just put it in the chat if you want, and we can clarify that question. So, okay, someone says, I thought about journaling, but don't want to impede the thoughts and energy flow. That's right. During the event, I don't think you journal. It's, again, I do the note taking when I'm guiding, but then I do encourage my people as they leave that night and for the next 72 hours, to never be without paper and pen, because some of those thoughts come up again. And a lot of times you're like, oh, I'll remember that. And then you don't. It's just too many thoughts. They keep coming. You have to get them down on paper so that you don't lose them. Because the thing is, when people ask, when new people say, do I have to just do this once and then I'm done? And you see that stuff in the media where someone says, specifically, I'm going to use an example that was in Fantastic Fungi, when Paul Stamets had his experience and then said, I had lifelong stutter and I no longer stutter. And everyone's like, that's amazing. Well, that wasn't Paul's one experience. It fixed that thing. But if you have 20 things, 50 things, 100 things that need to be processed, or, these traumas, these things that need to be healed, maybe in a ceremony, you have 1 or 2, maybe 5 even, but what it does is it just removes those or softens those things, but then it opens you up to the next things down on the list. If I only had one thing to fix in my life, maybe one ceremony would be enough, but I am not lucky enough to be that person. And the other thing I'm learning is, the longer I'm in the space, I'm doing less healing because there's less healing to do. I've been doing the work for a while. And if I'm doing ceremonies, I'm ending up having these creative or spiritual experiences, which are very different and also lovely, but they're just, I'm not having to do the healing every second. So I'm seeing these questions now. Is microdosing the best way to get the full benefits from the ceremony? I don't necessarily think so. If people So I've seen it happen a few ways. Um, the, I had, when I work with people who are microdosing, I ask them to stop about a week before to kind of clear out their system, because if they're already have some mushrooms in their system, it just takes that much more for it to impact them. I did recently guide someone. In fact, Angie and I did this guiding together. This woman did some microdoses of the strain she was going to use on her big experience. And she did that in the 2 weeks leading up to it. And then about 5 days before, she stopped so that she could be prepare for the experience. But she felt like it helped her body prepare and her mind prepare for what was coming, because this strain was already familiar and already in her body. So I think that's interesting. Angie, somebody is asking, he's very interested in talking with you. So he's looking for contact information. If you want to drop your phone number or something into the chat, whatever you feel comfortable with.
Right.
Andrea says, yes, she's saying a lot of this sounds true. She's gone on about 40 journeys and things still come up. Yes. Just a lot of that is in our brain and needs to be processed. So, is an eighth or a quarter a more suitable dosage? If you're talking, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what an eighth or a quarter. I don't use those numbers in mushrooms. Sorry if someone else can clarify, or I usually use grams. 2 to 3 grams. Okay. Yeah, there's not suitable, right? It's what feels right to you, what's calling to you. So when I'm prepping people, I will say, the microdosing should be imperceptible. We cannot even tell it's in our bodies. By the time you're doing half a gram, you can really still kind of, work. And for most people, sometimes you're in a really great spot and that 1 gram hits you hard. There's no question. But for a lot of people, half to 1 gram, you kind of keep going. Then when I say, 2 to 4 grams is a outward facing dose. You can really interact with the world. You can go on hikes, you can listen to music, you can, and I know therapists who do this, and that's the dosage they're giving, is somewhere between 2 and 4 grams. And then if you're getting up to 5 or more, those generally are inward doses. Now, again, not everyone even drops in with that. So it's hard to say this is the exact thing, right? It's everybody, every person, every time frame is going to feel a little different. So you're kind of just figuring out what works for you. The other thing that we've learned is the bigger the container, the smaller the dose needed. And she's laughing because we were in a canyon on the Colorado River. I mean, this spectacular, unbelievable canyon. And people took half, 1 or 2 grams. And oh my gosh, those have been some of my biggest experiences. Is I was like, what just happened? And I had prepared the medicine for people. So I was like, I think I have overdosed everybody. I was really kind of scared. And then everyone settled into it, and it turned into one of the most beautiful nights. So, but because we were out in the open, yeah, that's when we learned, oh yeah, you don't need very much if your container is huge. And Andrea says, I think for journeys, it should be intuitive. Ask yourself, what are you ready for? I absolutely agree with that. And I'm going to say that as well. When I'm guiding people, we'll talk about, what do you think, what's feeling good to you? And I'll give them some options, because a lot of times they're first timers and they've never even tried it. So I'm like, I encourage 5, but it's really up to you. And then, and I prepare whatever number they say. I usually prepare double so that we can dose up if needed. But it's always up to them. I'm not saying you need more. I'm saying, doesn't feel like you're dropping in. Here's what I would suggest. How do you feel about that? So if they're dropped in, they don't need more. If they haven't dropped in, they can still consent and they can still make the decision. And I've had people absolutely say, this is as high as I want to go. I'm not going higher. Great. But I really do feel like we've evolved alongside these mushrooms. As humans, it's very, very likely that someone in your line has taken mushrooms. And I think it's part of who we are. And so we intuitively can make some guesses and just what feels right. And I'm a science-based person, so some of that feels kind of hippie to me, even when I say it, but I've just seen it happen too much. I don't have an explanation for it other than this is what I'm seeing. All right. Morgan says, when you say container, are you speaking of the environment you're in or the physical body? Great question, Morgan. Your container is, well, do you want to explain container, Angie? Or do you want me to do it? Okay.
Keep going. You're doing great.
Container is the space that you agree to stay in. So when we're on this river trip, we're in this canyon on this kind of island in the water. We're not going anywhere. That's where we're going. And if someone's in my house and I'm guiding them here, they stay in the kitchen, the living room, and the hallway to the bathroom, right? That's the container. Now, I will say, when we get to a certain part of the ceremony, I'll say, are you wanting to go outside? Do you want to go to my roof? I'm in a high rise. Do you want to go to the roof and see the views? As long as I'm with them, we can go out of the container we've set. But so you're saying, when you're creating the container, you're saying, okay, we're in a rented house. We're staying in the living room and the backyard. Those are the 2 places we're going. Or the whole house, right? You're just kind of saying, where are we allowed to go and where are we not? And you want people to agree to stay in the container, even if they start getting anxious saying, I got to leave. That's when you get into trouble, is someone's walking into traffic or they're trying to drive and they just shouldn't be, because they are far too altered. So staying in the container. And I'm going to say one other thing about that. Not only are you physically in the container, but I talk to my people about turning off your phone, getting into airplane mode, because otherwise the phone can pull you out of the container. You're getting a text from the school about your kid. And if it's not an emergency, then why are you getting that text? Or you're getting ads on your music streaming service. Those things can pull you out of that container. The other thing is texting you have these insights about your brother. Well, you got to text him right now. Don't do it. Don't text when you're in ceremony. It pulls you out of the container, and it's often regrettable texts. So it can wait. It can wait 24 hours. You haven't talked to your brother in 3 years. It can wait 1 more day. Don't make big decisions in or around the ceremony. All right. I'm seeing 2 more things. As I say a prayer for protection, and then it's Pandora's box in the depths of my brain, where images, memories, thoughts, and creativity come from. I write jazz music and feel ethereal. Wow, that's amazing. Mm-hmm. Thanks for sharing that. That's beautiful. And then I see another one that says, as facilitators, I ask this question to both of us. Do you believe that the more difficult the journey, that it directly correlates to more trauma that one has had? I had a client who took 2 grams and it was the scariest day of his life. Yes, I actually do think that's what it is. Do you agree, Angie?
Yeah.
Yeah. So a big part of our job is to anchor them. It shouldn't be scary. You can say you're feeling some fear. So here are some things to deal with it, right? Sometimes the fear is that their heart has started beating and they think something's wrong. Someone's starting to have a panic attack. And when you know you just took mushrooms, here comes this panic attack. I've had that happen multiple times, and I just have to grab, because I deal with anxious people. Remember, that's one of the niches that I've created. And so it happens. And so I just remind them, this is your body just responding to the mushrooms. This is very normal. You're going to your heart rate's going to right itself in about 10 or 15 minutes. You're just fine. And, we work through the breathing exercises. So that's a big part of that. But then the other thing is, if I had someone, Andrea, if I had someone who was having an extremely difficult time, here's the language I use. I say, do you want to stay here and face this difficult thing, or do you want to change the channel? And changing the channel, all that means is we're trying something different. We're going to, as little as you're laying down and now you're sitting up. You're going from an eye mask on to an eye mask off, earphones in to earphones out, right? Let's talk about something else. And then most of my people go, no, I want to stay here. But then a smaller percentage say, I want to go somewhere else. And then we do. And the majority of that group that moved to somewhere else said, no, I need to go back. A few say, nope, I don't want to deal with this right now. So just giving people that option, they start to feel a little more in control. It doesn't feel as scary. And if it starts to get scary again, they know they can change. Or they can change the channel. So I feel like that's, those are the things that we're doing. I'm seeing a few things here. And then I just want to make sure they're not questions. If I go too high a dose heroin, maybe the inner work still happens, but sometimes I don't remember it. Although sometimes it comes way later. A guide is especially helpful. If you're then you speaking in tongues, that's very funny. Okay, all right, I got it. When you talk doses, are they usually referring to dried weight or raw? Dry, always is what I'm talking about. And FYI, with those big doses, people get nauseous, especially with that many. So I only do lemon tech. That's when you're letting it steep in lemon juice. Then you strain off all the fiber and all you're getting is that lemon shot, and nobody is nauseous when that happens. Yeah, I couldn't eat that much. Oh, that'd be awful. I feel it in my feet. They get itchy, like I'm going on a journey. Used to hike in the woods. Yes. Awesome. Okay, this is great. The other thing, Andrea, when you talked about that person having a difficult time, I hope they're processing it properly, right? Because sometimes working with someone like Angie, you can take this experience that was one of the most difficult or worst of your life, and if you reframe it, it can become beautiful. It can become a really wonderful experience. So I would recommend that person doing some of that as well. Oh my gosh, we went to the top of the hour. Angie, any final words?
No, thank you. Thanks for everyone that participated. I love all these comments.
Yeah, I do too. This has really been fun. I still got some nausea on lemon tech. Yeah, no, you're probably not doing it wrong, Coral. If you've done mushrooms enough, sometimes your body gets a little bit and it goes, oh, I want to be nauseous. That does happen. Keep using lemon tech and it should stop over time. But yeah, most of my people, if they've been nauseous in the past, have a much better go on lemon tech. But you're right, not everybody. It doesn't work exactly for everybody. Okay, thank you, everyone. This was a fun conversation. And thank you, Angie, for bringing your skills. Loved it.
Of course.
We'll see everybody next week. Bye.